the day, which is going to discuss about the ease of doing business. I'd like to invite first our moderator for the session, Mr. Manoj Saxena, President-elect OPPI and Managing Director at Zydus Pharma and Country Division Head South Asia Pharmaceuticals Biopharmaceuticals Private Limited. And quickly inviting our panelists up on stage, Simpson Emmanuel, Managing Director and CEO at Roche Pharma India, Mr. Sanjay Sharma, Managing Director, Bristol Squibb India, Dr. Rajeev, Ranjan, Indian Administrative Service, IAS, retired, Ravi, Bhola, Managing Partner, KNS Partners, Krishna, Sarma, Founder and Managing Partner, Corporate Law Group, CLG, Dr. Vivek, Kashyap, INTERPAT, India Champion. Ladies and gentlemen, can we all give a warm welcome to our panelists and moderator, please? Let's keep the energy for this last session. Come on, everybody. Sure.
Okay, so we are good afternoon, everyone. We are in the last panel, so hold your breath. We'll keep it exciting. I have a lovely set of panelists, but we need all your energy. I know everybody is looking at their watches, the flight details and all that, but I guess ease of doing. So what I did is, since morning we are talking about the whole, India becoming the AI enabled, and I went to ChatGPT and I said, what is ease of doing business? Yeah, and I said, give me a short poem just to give, keep it exciting. So it says, in business flow, smooth and neat, no more hurdles, just swift feet. Less fuss, more chance to shine. Opportunities bright, all in line. When I asked what is the role of moderator and panelist, and I said keep it very, very short poem for me for a panel discussion. Said panel talks, ideas bloom, diverse voices fill the room. So with that, it also said that as a moderator I have to speak less. Did you see that there was no role for moderator? But anyways, I'll do whatever I can at the best. So we heard from DCGI, also from a lot of other stakeholders, and we are also constantly hearing India is moving forward. So let's start on a positive note. Maybe we go to Rajeev first. Rajeev, India has been a growth engine for the world. Economically, we have really galloped the ease of doing business. I guess every household in India, from a macroeconomics perspective, understands the ease of doing business, right? We have jumped ranking from 140 to now we are 68th rank. Which was the last ranking. In your views, what are the key factors which are driving this ease of doing business from a macroeconomic setup here? So, and Rajeev, my only request to all panelists is keep it short. If you can give your answer in 2 sentences, I would hug you at the end. If you keep 1 sentence, I will give you a kiss. Yeah?
Okay, so 1 sentence answer is India is the fastest growing large economy in the world for the last 3 years and to keep on doing that for the strategic advantages that it has, for the aspirational goals that it has set. We have been talking about 5 trillion and now we are at 4 trillion and going to 40 trillion or 26 trillion. And that is because of the demographic advantage that India has, we have been talking about, and the young population. Thank you.
Perfect. It was like 6 sentences, so no hugs and no kisses. But I like the way you framed it up. Ravi, you're also watching from a macroeconomic setup, right? What do you think? What is working well for India?
I think me being an intellectual property attorney, I see more from IP side of things. And I can say that the biggest change I have seen is, in a way, change in mindset. Be it in terms of the way IP is administered in India. Part of it is driven by digitalization, some of it we talked about earlier in the day. Also talked by getting the right kind of resources, skilled resources to administer IP in the country. And then of course a lot of legislative reforms that have come in to make it easier for R&D, for research, for product development to be easier. So I think it's a bunch of things, and also I must say that the IT attorney significant reforms even in the judiciary side of things, like almost like specialized IP codes that we have in India have given confidence to the industry that in case of a conflict situation, judiciary will be able to timely resolve those things. There's a bunch of those positives that have led to a lot of positive mindset there. Yeah.
But what you and Rajeev just said are significant positives for the country. Maybe we go to at a micro level and Simpson or Sanjay, if you want to really look at it in the healthcare, what do you think are the big positives? And then maybe Krishna and Vivek can also add to that here. From a healthcare, because you are more closer to the business, from a pharmaceutical. So Simpson, you want to?
Yeah, I'll just stick to one point. I think there are quite a few. I'd say that what efforts we are taking in terms of digitalization and the use of technology which is coming in, I think it's going to be big. It's absolutely critical that we continue to persist along this path because what we have as strength is data. At the end of the day, it's going to be, we need to see outcomes as to what's working and what's not working. And with the kind of data that we are bringing in, the transparency that we are bringing in, which is also bringing in the ease of doing business. Because with transparency, you have a better work environment as well. Sanjay?
So I would touch upon the infrastructure part of it. So if we look at healthcare infrastructure in India, and if we look at that in the context of Ayushman Bharat mission, I think that commitment that government is making towards the healthcare infrastructure is definitely going to help us as pharmaceutical industry to serve the patients better. So that's where I stop. I know I don't deserve a kiss or a hug, but I think I kept it short.
Yeah. Krishna, from your perspective, what has gone well for India in the last few years?
So I think I have to say that in the regulatory framework, there has been a vast improvement, and we heard the DCGI speak, so I don't need to repeat. But I do think that I would consider that one of the best steps that has happened in the last few years.
Perfect. You will get a healthcare, Krishna. Okay. Short. Vivek, you represent the IPAT from a IP environment. So what do you think the IP environment has improved? I know Ravi also mentioned some of it.
Yeah, thanks, Manoj. See, from IP perspective, some of the aspects Ravi has mentioned, some of the aspect Malti also covered. But I think what has happened is that there has been a lot of political will, starting with the IP policy, national IP policy we had, which was reinforced by the parliamentary committee report, and the kind of changes which we see of modernization of the infrastructure at the IP office levels is humongous, and it's very concrete, very robust. One of the interesting examples which I think I would like to give here, Manoj, is, which I don't know how many of us are aware, maybe in the history of innovator industry, we had a examiners training program with the patent office, and there was a representation, from the OPPI industries, and it was very interesting because we all focused only on the innovation aspect of it. And what we found was that there was so much of exchange of information at the innovation and the R&D level, which, usually gets diluted when you're looking from a pure IP perspective. So it's not only about IP per se, but I think it's all about innovation. And when we had this trainings program, which was even appreciated by the Controller General himself, and we are going to have a follow-up maybe in the early next quarter. It was phenomenal. And I think this kind of a mindset where we, for the very first time, had the innovator industry participating with the controllers and examiners of the patent office was remarkable.
Thank you so much, Vivek. I think you raised a very, very good point. You talk about India at 100, that's the running theme. And if Simpson is number 1, Vivek is number 6. And this is a question for the audience. You have to raise your hand. So Simpson, the question goes to you, and the audience will give the vote later on. Yeah? If you have to give one area where we as India, if India Team India has to focus upon for the next 25 years as we go into the Amrit Kaal, to really improve ease of doing business in pharmaceuticals, what it would be? Just one word answer. You don't have much time, others have time to think. Yeah. And for the audience, I will ask how many agree to 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 or 6. Yeah.
I'll put the tagline of reform to be relevant because we will have to ensure that we already have volumes. We have 1.4 billion population. We have to ensure that
you have to make it life easier for me and the audience. Yeah. One word, yeah.
One word is we need to have quality along with innovation.
Quality and innovation. Okay, I take 2 words. Sanjay.
Research.
Research. Rajeev.
Innovation.
Innovation.
Legislative framework around trade secrets and regulatory data protection.
Yeah, Ravi, now everybody knows why lawyers are complicated. Can anyone understand? At least, can you simplify this for Ravi? I am not a lawyer, yeah?
So the idea is that we have to have a regulatory framework that can enable innovation to be truly protected.
Got it. Okay. Good. Regulatory framework for innovation, yeah?
Predictable and coherent policy.
Okay.
I would again say and maybe elaborate a little bit trade secrets and quality of IP examination and enforcement.
So let's, the part of the communication is, and some of the messages we are repeating since morning, is we always are trained in leadership that, as many times you repeat the communications, it gets assimilated easily, people get clarity. So for getting the clarity, how many of you agree to what Simpson said, if you remember what he said? Reforms, yeah? Quality and innovation, reforms in the quality and innovation. So quite a few hands, maybe around 10. How many agree to Sanjay? Sanjay said, you remember? Research R&D. Yeah? And how many agree to Rajeev, and also I guess Ravi's point was also innovation. He was more lawyer innovation, Rajeev was simpler bureaucratic innovation. Yeah? How many agree for innovation should be the India's priority? Okay, I see some of them are raising both their hands in everything, so which shows their engagement is very high. And how many of you agree with Krishna? Yes, simplifying regulations, predictable policy. Sorry, yeah. And on the data side, data secrecy, and on the IP is Vivek. Very few. I think only the president-elect are raising hands. Okay, there are few now. No, but thank you for that. So let's go deep. Yeah. Maybe we start with Krishna with you. I think in India, a lot of time we refer that there is no predictability on policy. Yeah? And sometimes we go back, which was the case with clinical trials, and now what we have got is a wonderful set of clinical trial policy. Yeah? What should we do as Team India, both private sector as well as the public sector, government stakeholders included, to make us a little bit more predictable on the healthcare front, to make us easier for doing business, but also on the lines of what some of them said, right?
So I think I will focus on 2 aspects. One is it's good to have a predictable policy on paper, but the implementation has to be ensured that it's transparent and that it's dependable. It has to be coherent. So I think in clinical trials, for example, that bit is missing to some extent, which actually the DCJ himself mentioned. For example, a lot of power has devolved to the SECs. So the SECs need to make sure that there's a SOP, the standards that all of us know and play by. So that's one angle. The other one is on innovation. I think the country has been always playing a very defensive IP strategy. Instead, we, as a country, I think we should embrace it as a more enabling policy, because if you see the latest the paper that has come out, it talks about innovation, and in many aspects, it talks about funding of the innovation, but it is very scarce on how you're going to get there. The time-tested way that every other country has done it is by having intellectual property. In that, I would think, patents and regulatory data protection are the two that I would focus on.
Perfect. Vivek, since this is a topic which is closer to your heart, and you also, you want to add to further on that, and how can we do a better, simplify life for pharmaceutical industry and ease of doing business, particularly from a innovative IP ecosystem perspective?
Yeah, I think maybe I'll just build up on what Krishna added with respect of IP protection in India. I think when we are talking about value-based IP and also for a value-based IP for a value-based innovation in India, I think, as I said in the earlier point, that it is very important that we need to focus on the quality of how the IP quality is measured at the examination level. That's one part of it. The second, we have already seen a lot of efforts and a will to enforcement of patents and IP through the establishment of IP codes. But I think that is also needs to be accelerated so that there is a consistency across the country with respect of enforcement of patents. Now, why I say that quality is important from an examination point of view, because if we are thinking that we need to be at par of the best of the economies across, then I think from a volume perspective, we've already achieved that with the infrastructure changes and manpower, human resources changes in the patent office. But at the quality level, I think a lot needs to be done for the value of IP. One area where I think, which I have always called, and Ravi has also mentioned, is our underdog is trade secrets. There's a lot of capturing in the latest pharmaceutical policy paper on cross-border collaboration, foreign direct investment with the prospect of manufacturing in pharmaceuticals. And that involves technology transfer. And when we are talking about technology transfer in these areas, the most important thing is that how do we protect trade secrets, even if there is no patents around it. So I think that is an area which really needs to be worked upon, and that's how I will end it. These are the three areas which really need to be worked upon. Finally, one more area which I also want to add. Sorry for that, Manoj. But I think we have been talking about the newer technologies, medical healthcare technologies, customized medicines coming up, and I think there is a regulation, a structured regulation, especially policy regulation from Krishna's perspective is on human genetic resources and sharing of that. We do have some kind of a coverage in Biodiversity Act with respect of that, but there is no streamlined regulation how that's going to be shared, and protected. So I think that is another area that needs to be done.
Great input there, Krishna and Vivek. Maybe Simpson, you in the previous panel you mentioned about the whole value thing with the access. Yeah, I think ease of doing business also. When we talk about how India progresses and simplifies for companies who are focusing on research, is around the access approach. And also the financial leeways around it, or incentives around it. Any thoughts on that?
See, there's a lot that can be done. The good thing which I see is that there is more openness with governments to kind of collaborate. Because I can personally say that currently we have some access projects running in 4 states in collaboration with the state governments, which I wouldn't have envisioned maybe 10 years back. So definitely there's openness. But again, in terms of what can be done better, is that it's still an individual's motivation or a passion which is actually leading these initiatives. It needs to become systematized. It needs to become a process. And there are quite a few rigid bureaucratic hurdles that we face, because of which even well-intended initiatives are not seeing the light of the day. So that is something which needs to come and make time as a reform when we talk about ease of doing business. Because at the end, when we talk about access per se in India, it's a big problem. I keep saying this in almost every panel, it takes a village to raise a child. It's not just one organization which is going to solve for it. It's not just the government's responsibility that they will be able to solve for it. Quite a few partnerships will have to come together. The ecosystem has to work together. And do we have a framework and a policy around it is the question. Because many times it's difficult to deal individually with multiple departments and multiple other agencies. Because somebody needs to facilitate that, and that cannot happen through a pharmaceutical industry initiative. It has to happen through the government. There has to be a body which needs to facilitate this.
Yeah. Maybe I picked the brains of Rajeev. Yeah, he said somebody from the government has to understand it well. And you have been, been on the background doing a lot of work in your previous roles. So what are your thoughts, Rajeev, when we have to really look at, I know there is a policy on incentivizing research now, but moving forward, how do you think India can put more money on the innovation?
Yeah, just to recall, my stint earlier in DIPP, at that time it was DIPP, the first draft paper on EODB was produced in 2001. And I had some role in that. So you see, we have been talking about EODB for the last so many years, but it's only in the last few years we have seen very perceptible and very clear changes and improvements. I mean, some of them are captured in the rankings. We know that the EODB rankings have been discontinued, but now instead of EODB, we are calling it, the World Bank is saying BEE, Business Enabling Environment Larger Concern. But look at what has happened in the last few years to get a sense of how fast changes have happened for the better. Now we are 63rd rank. We were 142 out of 100, almost 190 countries. So now we are 63. But look at also the GII ranking, Global Innovation Ranking by WIPO. We are on 40th. We were around 80. In 80s, from 80s to 40 in the last 6-7 years. So what we are now seeing is a very, very, very encouraging sign in building the innovation ecosystem. And I will explain with just 2-3 numbers. There is a 7x increase in the patent grant. Now, again, the issue is quality. I mean, that will come back to the quality angle because that is a major thing. Unfortunately, I will take a little more time. 7x in patents, number increase. Now we are giving 30,000 patents. During my time, we were looking at 2,000 patents per year. So now it's a 7x. In design is 2x. In trademarks is 4x in the last 7-8 years. So one is that things have changed for the better. Now financing is a major issue. A larger ecosystem of financing. India spends just 0.7% on R&D, but we need to go to at least 2%. 2% is what the target has been set. But again, if you look at it, and it's a competing demand. How much we spend on healthcare itself, public healthcare. Now we are touching about 2.1% of GDP in India. We should be doing much, much more. See, 2.5 was the target set in 2017 National Health Policy. So we are at least touching that. But you look at it, what is required. From the state perspective, I want to just explain to you that 30% of the total public health spend is from the center, 70% is from the states. And the best of states, I've worked in Tamil Nadu extensively, spends about 5.6% of its total expenditure on health. It should be at least 8%. Now we are going towards it. So that is where now question is, how do you find money for better healthcare and more innovation? And the challenge for that's again the good point, the silver lining is that there is a lot of the startup culture, the money coming out of that is helping it. So I see very good trends coming up, and it is just a matter of time. Otherwise we would not have gone so far and so fast ahead. We just keep the trend on. And as your first question was that we are on the India is the growth engine for the world. So that is why, and healthcare is the most crucial thing that we're looking at. So there are good times ahead.
Thanks, Rajeev. Ravi, going back to what you said, India can do better in terms of, if you focus on the regulations. I know we focus on the IP ecosystem, but on the regulation side, do you have any comments on what, maybe some examples as to what can improve?
So for example, if you go deeper into aspects like trade secrets, for example, where we feel there's a need to have a legislative framework. Our national IPR policy did talk about the time has come for India to have a law around trade secrets. So the challenge, for example, is if I, as an innovator sitting in US or Europe, even having R&D facility in India, generating a lot of data, or I'm bringing in technology from outside and partnering with a local partner, let's say. All that technology transfer happens. Now, whether the existing legal framework gives me enough protection under the contract law or common law to protect me in case there is something goes wrong in terms of protection of my trade secrets. So there's a need to have a supplementary support system in terms of law to give confidence to innovators across the world, so that they can come in, invest a lot more than what they're currently doing, knowing that there's a support system around it. Similarly, if you have clinical trial data, if the data is used for other companies, relied upon by other companies to get approval for their subsequent molecule, same molecule, biologics and things like that, is there a kind of an incentive for me to do that kind of clinical trial and be protected in some form or shape?
So maybe, Sanjay, last comment on the clinical trial. How do you see from a BMS standpoint or from a pharmaceutical standpoint, what could be done to further bring clinical trials in India or simplify them? Yeah.
Thank you, Manoj. So I believe that the new policy which came in 2019 is very clear, very transparent in terms of how should companies approach conducting clinical trials, and not only phase 4, phase 3, but including phase 1 and phase 2. However, I think the operationalization of that policy, the execution of that policy, and we had Shri Rajeev ji here today talking about it, the whole point, as Krishna also alluded to, the operation of the SSCs, committees, what is allowed, what is not allowed, bringing that transparency into execution, I think will take us a long way, because conducting clinical trials is the only way that you develop products and bring them to the life. So that's what I see. I think in terms of clinical trials, that operationalization transparency is needed.
Perfect. So we have 150 years of experience on the panel. Maybe we have 2 minutes for questions. If someone wants to ask any question with the panelists before we close it, yeah. Okay, that means there are no questions. Everything is very clear. The panelists, thank you so much. You have been a spot for the panel. I know we were rushing a bit because of time, but thank you so much for being the spot and being the panelists, and thank you so much for the insights that you gave. I'm sure this is much more helpful for all of us who have attended this session. Thank you once again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Saxena, for really keeping the pace of the panel discussion up. I'd like to invite Mr. Anil Matai to please join us and give a small token of our gratitude to our panelists and of course our moderator too. Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a big round of applause to our final panel of the day? And here's reminding all of you to share your key moments from the annual summit using the hashtag OPPI annual summit, hashtag Bharat ke liye. We'd love to speak to you, engage with you, and keep the buzz alive on digital as well. For a photo please, together.
Hold it. Wide रखना दोस्त अपना.